Hi, my name is Fallon, and me and my husband make different quilt notions that are perfect for making your quilting and sewing just a little bit easier. Here is a quick look at some of the items that we make in our shop, but I'll go through and explain what they all are in some detail. So the first item I want to show you is the Quilters Slidelock. This Slidelock is patented and we sell it in two different sizes. So we have the first one here that is 24 inches and then this one that is 14 inches. Now here's what makes the Slidelock special. So first, the edge here, the acrylic is a 1/4 inch thick. So it's definitely much thicker than most quilt rulers that you have. That helps ensure that the rotary blade doesn't come up over the edge and nick your fingers, because we have all been there. Another thing that is nice is this handle. So the handle is really great because again, it keeps you up farther away from the blade, but also when you press down on the handle, there are springs here that engage these bumpers that are across the bottom of the handle. Those press through and then they grip your fabric because there are holes through here that the bumpers can come through. Why is that important? Well, because when you're pressing down on the handle, it sends pressure throughout the length of the handle, so all of the bumpers engage, making it where you don't have to travel your hand across a ruler and keep it in place as you're cutting. So this really eliminates how many miscuts you get from your ruler veering off course and causing your rotary blade to go off course and miscut your fabric. But let me just show you how it works. I think you'll really be able to see how amazing it is if I demo it for you. All right, so when I'm cutting yardage, I definitely always grab the 24-inch slide lock. And the first thing I do is I line it up on some lines on my mat and I trim an edge away so that I have some nice straight fabric to work with. So when I go to cut, I just press down on the slide lock and it engages those bumpers so that they grip the fabric and my slide lock doesn't slide around and miscut anything. Now you notice that the slide lock does not have any lines on it, so you can either use the lines on your mat. I don't prefer using the lines on my mat, so what I do is grab one of my other rulers to use to measure. I am cutting this fabric into strips for binding. I cut mine to 2.5 inches. So I'll line up the 2.5 inch line on my clean edge that I just cut. And then I take the slide lock and slide it right up against that ruler, press down, and then I cut my strip. And I actually have this fabric folded, so I have 2 strips here. And then I'll just continue to go on and cut the rest of my binding strips. Press down, and then I have my strips. So one of the nice things you might have noticed is that I just press down in the center of the slide lock and it engages all the bumpers across here, keeping it in place across the entire fabric. So what you might notice that you need to do if you're using a ruler like this one is that when you lay it down, you're going to have to press and move your hand as you cut. Because if you're holding it here and you're cutting, as you get up to the end, it might move to the side. So with the slide lock, it's nice that you can just press it down in one spot in the middle and cut all the way across it. So you might be wondering why we have the 14-inch slide lock. And the answer is simple. Now think about this. Once you cut your strips, sometimes you need to cut it down into a smaller size, right? Maybe this isn't for a binding. So what you'll do is cut your strips. Say you're cutting the 2.5 inch strip, but then you need to cut it down to 2.5 inch squares. So I turn the strip here and then you would just do the same thing. Line up the 2.5 inch on here, and you could use the larger slide lock here if you want, But some people do like having the smaller one so that it's just easier to move around. It's nice and petite, and you would just do the same thing. Press it up against the other ruler at the 2.5 inch, or you can use the lines on the mat if you prefer. Press down, and then you would cut your squares. All right, so that was the Quilter Slidelock. Now, after you cut your fabric, you're probably going to want to start sewing. And sometimes when we sew, unfortunately, we do need a seam ripper. If you are going to have to use a seam ripper, why not use one that is really comfortable and really beautiful? My husband makes these seam rippers and they are double-sided. One side has a seam ripper on it and the other has a stiletto. So the seam ripper, you probably know how that works. And you just put it under your stitches and unsew. The tool is really, really sharp, but what I really love about it, well, there's a lot of things I really love about it. One, my husband uses a variety of different woods, so you can pick out the one that you think is the most beautiful, but I also love that it is a big handle, so it's easier to hold than some of the other ones I have. And I like that when I'm not using it, I can put the sharp part of each side back inside the handle so that I don't have to worry about accidentally cutting myself or poking myself with it. The seam ripper side, like I said, you probably know how to use that side already. The stiletto side, what I use it for a lot is when I'm sewing binding. I'm going to show you here on just the block that I'm sewing, but I just use the stiletto side to guide my fabric through to the needle. And especially with bulky binding, I can press down, hold all the layers together to make sure they don't bunch up before they get to the needle. So it's just a lot nicer to have this instead of getting my hand too close to the needle because I don't want to sew myself. So you may have also noticed that I have this tray here next to me as I sew. It's really nice. My husband makes these also, and they're available in a variety of different wood types. But I keep my seam ripper stiletto in one of the slots, and then the other you can use for anything you would like, marking pens, anything that you like to keep close at hand. I usually put my easy press pen there because I use it a lot. And then the tray area is magnetic, and so it holds pins really, really nicely, keeps them from falling around, which can sometimes happen and you don't want to accidentally step on one. That tray is also available in our shop, and it is really nice and convenient to keep some of the items that you use often close by. So another item that I usually keep over by my sewing machine for when I need to press some seams is a clapper. The kind that my husband makes is inspired by an iron, and I love that it has the handle on it. I love the shape. It's very unique, and these are nice and heavy and perfect for pressing seams. All right, so the last two items I want to show you are our trim locks. So we have two different types of trim locks. We have one trim lock that is square and is used for trimming half square triangles or hourglass blocks. And then the other trim lock we have is for trimming flying geese, and those are rectangles. Now for the trim locks, we have sizes that range from 2 inches up to 6.5 inches. And then for the flying geese trim locks, we have 3 different sizes. Now you can purchase these individually, or we do have bundles available for them as well, but let me show you what is really special about them. All right, so for our trim locks that are square, you can see we have some grips on the bottom of them, and then we have a diagonal line that goes from corner to corner along each side. That is so you can trim either half square triangles or hourglass blocks. It is also made from a thick acrylic, just like our slide lock, and then it has a handle to keep your hand up away from the rotary blade and nice and safe. And then on our flying geese blocks, we also have the etching to mark our 1/4 inch line, and then the etching for the seams on the flying geese. You can see the point comes a 1/4 inch away from the edge to make sure you get that perfect point every single time. So let me show you how to trim with them, and this is really where you can see how convenient and special these are. So line up that etched diagonal line with the seam of your half square triangle. And then trim along one side, twist, trim along the next side, twist, twist, and trim. And then you have a perfect half square triangle. Now, the half square triangle turns out perfect every single time, and since you don't have to readjust the trim lock every time you trim a side, it goes really fast to trim these up. I have a few videos on my channel that show, one, how fast they trim, and then I also show them in a quilt so you can see how nice they turn out. I will link any of those videos that I have for you below so you can check them out and see the trim locks in action in different sizes and how nicely the blocks turn out after using them. So I'm going to show you how to trim up with the flying geese block as well. All right, so to trim with the flying geese trim lock, you will just line up those etched lines on the trim lock with the seams on the flying geese. Make sure the point is lined up. And then just like with the square trim lock, you'll trim one side at a time. Add a little bit of pressure there so as you turn to hold the fabric in place. And then just like that, you will have it all trimmed up. I really especially love trimming with the flying geese trim locks because flying geese I think are really finicky, and these come out perfect every single time. I do have my scrappy wave quilt that uses the flying geese trim lock, so I'll link that below so you can see how that looks finished in a quilt as well. So there are some of the items that we hand make here in our shop and have available for sale on our website. If you have any questions about any of them, please let me know. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!